Hey guys, Tom here again from SerumPresets.com, and in this tutorial for Extra Record Serum, we're going to be looking at making the bass sound from a track by a producer called Zoo called Faded, which you'll most likely recognize. I'll just quickly play it for you. So hopefully you recognize that, and hopefully you like the sound. I know it's not absolutely, spot on. It's really difficult to recreate sounds exactly as they were because I have no idea, what synth he used, what processing he did, and so on. But nevertheless, it's a really nice sound on its own anyway, and I think it's quite close to the original. Now, quickly before making this sound from scratch, I'll just quickly just go over that. This is bass 08, as you can see at the top here, from my Future House bass pack for Serum. If you're interested in that, there's 128 Future House bass presets that I created completely myself. You can go check that out at SerumPresets.com. There's a full audio demo of all the presets included in that, or you can click the link in the description below and it'll take you to that page as well. So thanks in advance if you decide to purchase that. It really helps support me and the channel, and also you'll get yourself a really nice collection of bass sounds. So without further ado, let's go ahead and initialize the preset here first of all. Now, the first thing we're going to do, we're just going to switch Oscillator A off for now, and we're just going to switch on the sub oscillator in Serum. We're actually going to pitch this down -2 octaves. This will depend on the notes, the octave of the MIDI notes that you're actually inputting into Serum. So, for example, the notes that I'm inputting, I believe, are above middle C, so they're the octave above middle C. So because of that, I've had to pitch this down 2 octaves. But if your octave is lower than mine, then you'll not need to lower this quite as much. But the main thing to bear in mind really is that we are going to use a simple sine wave for the low end of the sound, and we're also going to click this direct out button here, which is a really good thing to do for your when you're using the sub oscillator to create a nice consistent sub to the sound. Just clicking the direct out means that it's not going to be affected by the filter or the effects that you add later on or anything like that, and it's going to keep the low end of your bass sound really consistent. The next thing we're going to do is switch on Oscillator A here, and we're going to pitch this down -1 octave. So the sub oscillator and oscillator B, which we're going to get into in just a second, are both going to be a whole octave below oscillator A, and oscillator A is going to provide some of the high end for the sound, and we're actually just going to stick with a very simple saw wave here. The bass sound in the track Faded by Zoo does have this kind of acidy sound to it, which will be the result of what we add in Oscillator B. But it also sounds quite analog. There's no like really complex waveforms in the sound or anything like that. It seems quite simple. So we're just going to stick with the simple saw wave. To thicken the sound up a little bit, we're just going to add a little bit of unison. We're just going to give it 3 voices and bring the detune down a little bit. Essentially, the unison is going to thicken up the sound by making sure that there are 3 voices that are being outputted by the oscillator, so 3 versions of this waveform that are all slightly detuned from one another, as you can see visually here, and that's going to result in a much thicker sound. The next thing we're going to do is dive into Oscillator B, and as I mentioned earlier, we're going to pitch this down -2 octaves, and like I said, it's not really that complex. The sound does sound quite acidy, so we're just going to use the acid wavetable here. Now, one effect that you can add to a bass sound like this that uses this acid wavetable We're not going to do it in this sound because I was trying to recreate it as closely as possible. But one thing you can think about doing is automating this wavetable position, and that will kind of emphasize the acid sound even more. But we're just going to keep it simple for the minute, and we're just going to use both these oscillators with single cycle waveforms rather than modulating the wavetable position. And so just make sure this is all the way to the left. Again, as in oscillator A, we're going to thicken up this sound a little bit. We're actually going to add 7 voices to this one, and again, just bring the detune down a little bit. The next thing we're going to do is set up our amplitude envelope, which by default in Serum is envelope 1. Now the bass sound is quite plucky. It's not too short, it's quite drawn out and has a little bit of sustain and decay. So we're just going to modify the amplitude envelope in Serum to reflect that. We're going to bring the decay quite far down here. We're going to keep the envelope 1 quite short. And we're just going to give it a little bit of release as well. So far with no filter, we've just got this basic sound. Which at the minute isn't sounding too special, but what really gives a lot of this sound its character is the filter. Now, as I mentioned at the start, it is somewhat of an analogy sounding sound. So what we're going to do is actually use the Moog low pass filter, but we're actually going to use the low pass MG low pass 18 dB filter instead of the default 12, and this just means the higher this number, basically the more extreme the filter is going to be, the more decibels per octave of frequency it's going to actually attenuate. And the reason for this is because when I listen to the sound, it does sound, there aren't like very many highs to the sound. It does sound like the higher frequencies are being attenuated quite a lot. Just make sure that oscillator B is being routed through the filter as well. By default it's switched off, so we want to make sure that every part of the sound apart from the sub, which is going direct out, is being routed through this filter. So now if I play it, we have this. So it's closely, it's a bit closer, but it's still not quite there yet. So what we're going to do, what really gives it a lot of the character is two things. First of all, boosting the resonance, which you can really hear in the bass sound. There's a lot of resonance, and what resonance essentially is, as you can see visually here, when you boost the resonance, you can see that the frequencies around the cutoff point are kind of increased and lifted, and this is much more noticeable when you actually move the cutoff round. As you can see here, this resonance boost that we've given it, this like little peak here, when you move the cutoff, you can actually see that move around. So we've increased the resonance, but what we're also going to do is use a second envelope with a little bit of a longer decay than the first one, because we want the cutoff to move down quite slowly compared to the amplitude of the sound. We'll just give it a little bit of release as well. And what we're going to do is simply drag and drop this envelope onto the cutoff of the filter. Now what's going to happen here is that when the sound's played, depending on where we set our envelope, and we've set it quite plucky here, the cutoff frequency of the filter is going to move, which if you've seen any of my other tutorials is quite commonly used in like bass pluck sounds, but because we've also boosted the resonance, this is going to be emphasized even further, as I'll just show you here. I'll just quickly compare that to having no resonance, which is still a nice sound, but when you boost the resonance, you can really hear the emphasis on the kind of pluck sound. So that's pretty much the sound. The only thing we've got left to do here is to switch on this hyper dimension effect here. We're not actually using the dimension section of the effect, we're just going to use the hyper section, which is basically making the sound even more thicker by again using a similar unison technique to that we went over in the oscillators. But we're going to bring the mix down a bit because we don't want it to be too extreme, but this is just going to thicken the sound up a little bit. It's essentially applying unison to the whole sound rather than just the oscillators individually. And that's pretty much the sound. It's very, very simple. It's not hard to get sounds like this out of Serum with just a little bit of modulation to the filter cutoff with a nice boost in resonance, and also just layering two different waveforms from oscillator A and B with a nice consistent low end. So hopefully you got a lot out of this video. I really enjoyed doing these tutorials for you guys. Again, if you haven't already, go ahead and check out my Serum preset pack, which has 128 future house basses in there. Also, if you go to SerumPresets.com, there's a lot of other preset packs that I've created for other genres as well that you might be interested in. So thanks in advance if you decide to go check that out. Again, it's over at SerumPresets.com, or the link in the description below. If you have any questions about this video or any suggestions for other tutorials in the future, or just simply let me know what genre you're actually into, because I really like getting ideas from you guys for content and helpful tutorials to create. So if you have any ideas or suggestions, feel free to leave them down below. Again, if you want to check out my preset pack, go ahead and go to SerumPresets.com. But without further ado, guys, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.